Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today you find me out in the middle of the South Downs. Now the reason I brought you here is the hill that we're looking at right here, called Harrow Hill. And Harrow Hill was the last place in West Sussex that fairies were reported in 1939. But sadly, we can't go to Harrow Hill. I recently tried to make a video where I went to Harrow Hill and started out right the way over there, wandered all the way across the downs, and then when I got to Harrow Hill, I found that it had been fenced off, signs that it was public land. So for those of you who aren't aware, we are in a national park here, South Downs National Park. But this national park isn't like the national parks you have in other countries. A lot of this national park is privately owned, and the people that still own the land do like to restrict access to places. And one of the possible reasons why this was the last place that fairies were seen is because it is a hill fort. So it was a hill fort, and then the Romans moved in to West Sussex and they built a fort on top of there. There's also a hill fort or a living space on that ridgeline there, which is Black Patch Hill, and then on the other side of that there was another hill fort, and can't see on the camera, but I'm pretty sure about there is Sisbury Ring, another hill fort. So you've got all of these hill forts all in a line. And it was in 1939 that one of the people that lived at this farm down here was out walking on Harrow Hill at I think it was dawn. It was either dawn or dusk, and spotted them, and that was the last time they were reported. But that's not where we're going on the video. We're headed off to Rackham over here, and we'll pick up along the way. So backpedaled a little bit and come to the top of this hill, the trig. It's right in the centre there with the sheep. Can't see very much here, but there is some undulations down in the ground there. So it's possible there could have been a hill fort here, but always intrigued about this copse of trees, and I actually wanted to get that on my walk through, but right on the other side of this coombe, and we're headed in that direction. So, but great views looking out over Sussex. I've got Gratling Beacon over there, and Arundel Castle right down there. People out enjoying their Sunday on their horses. And over here I wanted to show you this over here, because all along this landscape we see these, they're called cross dykes, and these date back to roughly 3,500 years, the cross dykes. We see them over on the other hill there in Arundel Park, and a bit further along up the top there at Bury as well. So they're sort of littered everywhere. I don't think anyone actually has worked out, other than it was a sign of power, what these cross dykes were. Kind of looked like an old Roman road. But when we visited Stonehenge, they had this type of cross dyking there. Again, that is downland, chalk downland. Now, one of my work colleagues, that's an interesting alignment, isn't it? Wow. Not until you see it that you see it. at that. So this dike here lines up exactly with Harrow Hill. Yeah, interesting. I'd be interesting to come here on a summer solstice, actually, to see, because I wouldn't be too astonished if the sun didn't rise over there. And yeah, pointing the other direction at the clump of trees. Here you can see some of the terracing that's taken place. Again, I don't know that there's ever been a hill fort there, but this sort of terracing happens where they're building a hill fort. Obviously, they might not be living within the hill fort, but they might be living on these small outcrops here. I think I probably forgot to mention it because I was distracted with that acute alignment. Actually, I might be looking across there. That's Chanctonbury as well. So not only is this pointing at Harrow Hill, it's pointing at Chanctonbury. Wow, yeah, so many distractions. Yeah, one of my colleagues thinks that this formation might be one of the places that the fairies were last seen, and yeah, I don't think that is the case. Generally speaking, and we'll touch on that when we get a bit further along, but generally speaking, you'll have hawthorn bushes and basically a portal for them to come through. So, which there would have been over at Harrow Hill. Right, we're going to head in that direction. So I'm off by a few hundred feet because when I was looking at maps, I was identifying this as the copse of trees over there, and annoyingly when I came out to start my walk, I parked over right next to those trees and was just going to zip along over to Rackham, but yeah, the maps led me to that, which brought me through this way, but it did give us a unique look at Harrow Hill lit from this side. Lovely to see these farmers' fields with all these wild flowers in. I believe they're getting paid to leave these fallow by the government, and this is to help with insects and birds and things like that. So we need to zigzag now. We're going to head down that way and then along. So right here we've got a little footpath right next to this copse of trees, and it'd be rude not to investigate, seeing as we are right next door to it. And the footpath runs right next to it as well. So I was saying, amazing colours in this field with all these wild flowers. I can already hear the bird song and the crows. Probably going to go out on a limb and say these are probably going to be beech trees, quite young ones. Tried to film it, but it wasn't going to come out on camera. But there's a couple of red-tailed hawks patrolling this area, I guess picking off the young birds or the rabbits. That's not a beech tree. Don't recognise the leaves on this or the bark. Doesn't look like it's a place that people come very often because it's very overgrown. I'll just have a flick around here and just see if there's a... Well, we've got a signpost here, but no. So public bridleway. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be any way to get into this copse. I always find it interesting when they have these copses of trees just left, because all of this land is very valuable to the farmer. So for them to leave some woodland in the middle of their fields, I always assume it's going to be fairly important to them. Sometimes it's for using with pheasants. Oh, some wonderful colours looking this way. But yeah, we're not going to get into this copse, but I can tick this one off my list of places I'd like to visit. So, first sign for me that we're getting close to the fairy ring forts is all of this, and I believe this is bracken, very spiky, and it's thought that this grows or is grown near where the fairies are to stop them escaping their portal. Just come across this old bench by the side of the pathway. Just goes to show that this was a way more popular place to come, and probably had a fantastic view previously. Don't think I've ever seen this on the South Downs either. To me, it looks like honeysuckle right next to this oak tree. So this is the place I've wanted to bring you to. So let's just talk about fairies, because Disney have popularised the fairy as this cartoon type character, and this started off back at the turn of the 19th century, where there's a guy that faked some pictures of fairies in his garden. It convinced some people at the time, but in my opinion they were clearly fake, and this was to just prepare us for the fact that fairies didn't exist. And to be honest, I'd probably agree with that. I don't think they do exist. However, our ancestors have believed in the fairy folk and the gnomes and the little people for thousands of years, and we've got 100 years worth of change of opinion that this is all fantasy of young children. So in Ireland, though, their culture hasn't been as corrupted as Western culture, and the same in places like the Eastern Bloc, Europe, and places like that. I've watched a lot of videos from all the way around the world, and some of these Eastern countries, they'll have these little characters that they'll keep in their houses to protect them from the little folk. And in Ireland they talk of ring forts, and a ring fort is basically one of these. And so normally they're surrounded by hawthorn trees. Also, people could plant elderflowers to protect their settlements from the fairy. And yeah, here we've got some really old hawthorn. Hawthorns all the way through this field, and this particular field has been set aside by the landowner to have these natural flowers. So does the landowner believe in the fairy folk? And so the ring fort basically is a portal. So like I said, modern culture has told us that fairies are this little sprite that comes around, but actually when you look at older cultures, they're not there. beings that come through a portal into our realm, and they generally do this at dusk and at dawn. And albeit there's a lot of grass in there, this is the centre of the portal. So from this perspective down here, you can see, I mean, it would be a classic bell barrow, this formation. But what I find interesting is that this isn't shown on any maps. When I have a look around over to the west in that direction, there is a whole sequence of bell barrows called Rackham Ruins or something like that. But yeah, they're marked on maps. This one is just a field with some flowers on and some trees, and you could also call it a dew pond, couldn't you? If you didn't want to call it a burial mound. But from Main Street Academia would say that this was a barrow built by the Saxons, and there was a body in the barrow, and that treasure hunters had dug the hole out from the top. And certainly when we look over at Stonehenge area, that, you know, some of that did go on, but I can't believe that treasure hunters went round every single barrow and dug the centre out of every single barrow, when the treasure clearly would not be in the top of the barrow, it would be in the bottom of the barrow, and the quickest way to the bottom of the barrow would be to tunnel from the outside. So from this perspective we can see top being removed from this. Ireland treat these very differently. They would call this a ring fort, and it's so important to Irish culture that they will not build on areas where there are ring forts. They will not build roads near where there's ring forts, and yeah, they believe strongly in the fairy folk, and that's even to this day. And I think the unique thing about Ireland is that stuff does get handed down through generations in Ireland because of the Catholic upbringing. They have quite large families. Their families are close knit, and so these traditions get passed down. Now, obviously this used to be present in Sussex, because the fact that there was an event recorded in 1939 meant that in 1939 those people believed it to the point that they recorded it. Obviously to today's eyes it's fanciful, but what the people would say is that you would need to leave some kind of offering at the ring fort, and that was basically because if you didn't leave an offering, the fairies would get frustrated with you and they would follow you home and they'd play all kinds of pranks. They were never awful, but there were tales of them stealing children or hurting livestock, which is terribly important to people back in those days. So some of the things I heard was that they would offer food or drink or milk, and clearly that's not going to be something that we could leave here. And the other thing obviously would be sort of crystals and stones and things like that. So yeah, I'm not going to be leaving that, but what I did bring was a seashell. And obviously the fairy folk, albeit the sea is over there, and there's probably other folk in this sea, so for them a seashell would probably be a nice offering. So I'll be popping my seashell into the centre of the ring fort, and if by chance the fairies are grateful for that, then suddenly you should see this channel go from its 1,000 subscribers right the way up. And if this is a burial mound, I mean, look at the view from this burial mound, absolutely stunning. All the way across Sussex you can see, and likewise all of Sussex can see this burial mound. So it's been about a 8-kilometre trek here and another 8 kilometres back, so I'll enjoy some coffee on the side of this hill before we make the journey back. One last thing to add is that when I was out at the summer solstice at Chanctonbury Ring, met a lovely man called Dan, and he was talking to me about Chanctonbury Ring, and he was walking the South Downs Way, and we were talking about these things that I video, and I told him exactly what I've just told you guys about the fairies, and he was also walking with an Irishman, and he tried to talk to the Irishman about the fairies, and he didn't want to talk about it. But Dan decided to sleep in this location in a small tent, and a brave man. And he did say it was a very strange night, very strange. He wouldn't go into detail, but yeah, he did say it's a very strange night. If you're watching this, Dan, comment down below. Yeah, thanks for the story. Included that in the video. And if everyone else could comment down below their thoughts on the fairy folk and their local belief systems in their countries, wherever you're watching it from. And yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.